What's up everybody, my name's Technohead, and welcome back to my channel, RetroTech. I know it's been a while since I've been on YouTube. I'm thankfully no longer laid off, but that means I have a little bit less time for YouTube. However, I've been able to sneak in a little bit here and there, and this video is the result of that minuscule amount of effort I've been able to squeak in between the stuff that I actually get paid for at work and my home life and stuff like that. Today we're going to be continuing my series, taking a look at the prices of classic video games and how they've changed over the last 20 years. We've already got a lot of great videos in this series, including such classics as the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Atari 2600, the Sega Genesis, classic handhelds like the Game Boy and the Sega Game Gear. And today, we're going to be continuing that tradition by taking a look at one of Atari's last attempts to stay relevant within the video game industry, and that's the Atari Jaguar. Now, the Atari Jaguar is a very interesting system. You were invited to do the math and look at it as a 64-bit system, and in many ways, it was a pretty advanced system. Unfortunately, Atari was never able to come through with the kinds of games that would have needed to be competitive with the other 32-bit systems that were out at the time, but there are some real classics on the Atari Jaguar. For example, I think Tempest 2000 is without a doubt one of my favorite games of all time. It's just a fantastic melding of sound and video, and it's really just a fantastic game that I would recommend to anybody, whether or not they like classic games or not. It's a fantastic game. Also, the version of Doom that came out for Jaguar was one that was used to create ports of Doom to many other consoles throughout the rest of the 32-bit era. But today, we're not necessarily going to be taking a look at some of my favorite games for the Atari Jaguar, because this is one of those systems where the better games are not necessarily the most valuable games. And in fact, many of the games on this list are, in most cases, not really the best representation of what the Atari Jaguar could do. But we're going to take a look at them nonetheless. So what exactly are we doing? Well, I wanted to take a look at how the prices of games have changed over the last 20 years or so. And so in order to do that, I went to the Wayback Machine and I pulled a bunch of prices from local LA video game store institution Game Dude, and I'm comparing those prices from 2004 adjusted for inflation to the current prices that are listed for these games on Game Dude. I know that there are a lot of other places you can find prices for. You could use eBay, you could use price charting, but I really wanted to do sort of an apples to apples comparison. And I figured that if Game Dude was going to be listing prices for these games today, they would be listing it for what they expected they could get for it, and it would be a pretty accurate representation of what the value of these games would be. And we could compare it back to what Game Dude was charging for it 20 years ago and get a pretty good idea for how the prices have changed over time. So this is going to be a list taking a look at the 25 games that have had the largest percentage change in their value over the last 25 years. I'm also going to be including the rarity of these games, so we can determine if rarity may have had a factor in determining whether or not these games were more valuable than some other games on the list. I also wanted to take a moment and point out how this video is going to be slightly different than some of the previous videos. After my Neo Geo CD video came out, I received a few comments from people that the aspect ratio for those games seemed to be incorrect. I didn't really understand that because I use a RetroTink 2X Pro, which should be up-resing these games into 480p, and I assumed that if it was in widescreen, it was because it was in, kind of a widescreen version of 480p, and if it wasn't in widescreen, it would show up in 4.3. But I found out that my HDMI capture card was actually taking the video and forcing it into widescreen as part of the capture process. And for that reason, I have a few videos where the aspect ratio is very incorrect, and I do plan to go back later and fix those videos in time. But moving forward, I have a new capture card, and I'm going to be doing everything that I can to capture and upscale these videos without adjusting the aspect ratio. So I hope you enjoy this crispy 4K video with the correct aspect ratio of all these Atari Jaguar games as we go through it. But that's enough babbling away. Let's jump right into it. Let's take a look at the top 25 most valuable Atari Jaguar games. Starting out the list at number 25 is Val D'Isere Ski and Snowboarding, which is a traditional skiing and snowboarding sports game. You can see here from the gameplay footage that it's using a pretty standard sort of sprite scaling snowboarding model, and this game was going for about $15 back in 2004, and that's gone up a little bit to $24 today, which is a 60% increase in value for Val D'Isere. It's followed by Missile Command 3D, one of the many remakes of classic Atari arcade games. This is taking the classic gameplay of Missile Command from the early 80s and putting it in 3D with some kind of basic 90s CG graphics here. This was a $49 game back in 2004, but it's $79 today, which is a 61% increase in value for Missile Command 3D. Then we have a game that only appeared on the Atari Jaguar. This is a sequel to Double Dragon 5, The Shadow Falls. Now this is a fighting game, unlike the other side-scrolling games in the Double Dragon series, and you can see that it has this kind of typical art for the Jaguar, which is almost this kind of like Flash ROM art or something like that. So going for $27 back in 2004 and $49 today, which is an 81% increase in value. Then we have Defender 2000. Defender 2000 is a remake of a classic Atari arcade game, Defender, with modernized for the time 90s graphics. You can see here there's some pre-rendered backgrounds and stuff like that. It's a pretty fun game and a decent version of Defender. It was $49 in 2004 and $89 in 2024, which is an 81% increase in value for Defender 2000, a very rare game. Then we have another very rare game. This is Breakout 2000. In fact, as I was doing research, I couldn't quite figure out if this game actually came out or if this is one of the games that was released at a later date by Songbird or something like that. Sort of an Arkanoid style Breakout game, but again, much like Breakout 3D, it's kind of moved the perspective into a 3D view. It was $82 back in 2004 and $149 today, which is an 82% increase in value. It's followed up by another fighting game on the Atari Jaguar. This is Ultra Vortek, a game that is sort of influenced by Mortal Kombat, but has kind of more cartoony graphics with monsters and skeletons and stuff fighting each other in sort of a heavy metal environment. It's a $32 game back in the day, and it's going for $59 today, which is an 84% increase in value for Ultra Vortek. It's a medium rarity at 48. Then we have a game that was very successful on British microcomputers. This is Sensible Soccer, referred to here in the US as International Sensible Soccer. This is a pretty standard soccer game, but a fun game, even on the Jaguar. It controls well, and you can see here I have no idea what I'm doing in the gameplay, but it is soccer. It's a $32 game back in 2004. But in 2024, this game was going for about $59, which is an 84% increase in value. Next up, we have a noble attempt. This is Supercross 3D, which is an attempt at a 3D motorcycle racing game. Fortunately, I don't think the Jaguar was quite up to the task because this game is nearly unplayable. I had a very hard time capturing footage for it in any way that made any sense at all. This is a $25 game back in the day, and it's only gone up a little bit to $49, but that is still a 96% increase in value for Supercross 3D. Then we've got one of the decent games on this list, a game I'd actually recommend playing. This is Pinball Fantasies at number 17. Pinball Fantasies was going for $25 back in the day, and that's a pretty good price. This is a game with fun, colorful graphics, and it uses kind of unlicensed pinball tables, but still with fun themes. Today, you can pick up a copy of Pinball Fantasies for $49, which is a 96% increase in value for a game with a 42 rarity. That's followed up by Flashback, The Quest for Identity. Now, Flashback, as you can see here, has some great rotoscope art. I included some of the pre-rendered art that comes in at the very beginning there. And the gameplay is a little more platform-like. This game was going for $25 back in the day. And in 2024, a copy goes for $49, which is a 96% increase in value for Flashback, The Quest for Identity. That's followed up at number 15 by Aircars. Now, this is another one of those games that has an extremely high rarity, and I'm not exactly sure if it actually came out or not. I've been having a hard time finding specific information on that. But this is a game that was going for about $65 if you wanted to pick up a copy back at Game Dude in 2004. But in 2024, a copy of Aircars is going to set you back $129, which is a 98% increase in value. Then we've got Iron Soldier. This was a game that was good enough to actually have a sequel on the Jaguar. This is the original. This is Iron Soldier 1, a very not rare game, or a common game, I guess you would say. This game was going for $12 back in the day. It's kind of a mech combat game where you stomp around and blast things with your missiles. Today you can pick up a copy of Iron Soldier for $24, and that is a 100% increase in value. Then we've got another heavy hitter from the Atari Jaguar collection. This is a fairly decent rendition of the arcade game Raiden. This game is a scrolling shooter game, and it's a lot of fun on the Jaguar. This is a relatively rare game, or a medium rare game, at a 52, and it was going for $25 back in 2004, but that price has gone up a little bit to $59 today, which is a 136% increase in value for Raiden. Then we have Zool 2. This is another one of those kind of platforming games that came in the wake of Sonic the Hedgehog. This game is extremely unrare at a 5, probably the most common game on the list. It was only going for $12 back in 2004, but for some reason it's gone up to $29 in 2024, which, despite its common rarity, makes it a 142% increase in value. That's followed at number 11 by Trever McFur in the Crescent Galaxy. This game is totally bizarre. It seems like somebody was asked to create a game sort of like Star Fox, and they said they could, but in the end they made kind of a flash game side-scrolling shooter with some JPEGs of tigers in it. This is $12 back in 2004 and going for $29 in 2024, and that's a 142% increase in value. Then we've got a very great port of Wolfenstein 3D. Not much to say about this. This is one of the classic progenitors of first-person shooters. Wolfenstein 3D on the Atari Jaguar looks and plays great. It sounds great. It's got all the levels and everything you would expect from Wolfenstein 3D. It was going for $20 back in the day, and today if you wanted to pick up a copy, you'd have to spend $49, which is a 145% increase in value for Wolfenstein 3D. Then we have iWar. iWar is a game that plays sort of like Descent, which was a kind of 3D shooting game on PCs back in the 90s. This game is not super rare, it's only a 36. Back in 2004, you could pick up a copy of iWar for $20. I have to admit, I never played this game until I captured footage for it, and I actually was having fun with it. Like, it's an interesting game where you're sort of inside a computer and flying around and picking stuff up. Today, if you wanted a copy, it's $49. Then we have, at number 8, Attack of the Mutant Penguins. This is a rarity 41 game, and as you can see from the gameplay here, I actually was having kind of a hard time figuring out what I was supposed to be doing. It seems like maybe it's supposed to play a little bit like Lemmings or something like that. This game was going for $27 back in the day, but today if you wanted to pick up a copy, you'd have to spend $69, and that is a 156% increase in value. Then we have what is definitely one of the best games for the Atari Jaguar, Power Drive Rally. Reminds me a lot of the rally games that came out on Neo Geo CD games, has good speech and really tight controls, just a fun game overall. Power Drive Rally was going for $25 back in the day, but today if you wanted to pick up a copy, you'd have to spend $69, which is a 176% increase in value for Power Drive Rally. That's followed up in number 6 by Super Burnout. Super Burnout is another game that's not especially rare. It's got a rarity of 15, making it a very common game. But this is another one of those games that was relatively inexpensive back in the day. For only $20 you could get a copy. And today it's gone up to $59, which is a 195% increase in value for Super Burnout. Then we have Atari Karts. Now, this is obviously an attempt to cash in on Mario Kart. It's basically a Mario Kart clone with Atari characters like Bentley Bear here. You can see it from the gameplay footage. This was a $49 game back in the day. But in 2024, if you wanted to pick up a copy of Atari Karts, you'd have to shell out $149, which is a 204% increase in value. And number 4, we have a fantastic game, NBA Jam Tournament Edition. This game is a rarity of 37, and similar to other versions of NBA Jam that came out on other systems, it's a fun 2-person basketball game featuring, licensed characters and kind of super deformed looking characters. It was $25 back in the day, but today it goes for $89, which is a 256% increase in value. After that, we've got Rayman. Rayman is an extremely cute puzzle platformer from Ubisoft. It's got great animation and good character design. Definitely a must-play game. Rayman was going for $32 back in 2004, but if you wanted to pick up a copy today, you'd have to spend $119, which is a 272% increase in value for Rayman. After that, we have a much less good platforming game in Bubsy. Bubsy is another attempt to cash in on Sonic the Hedgehog, and it attempts to, make colorful characters, but the controls just were never there for me. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Bubsy. This was going for $12 back in 2004, but today in 2024, a copy of Bubsy goes for $49, which, while not that expensive, does make it a 308% increase in value. And now, the final game. What will it be? Well, sort of anticlimactically, the final game is Club Drive, which is a game kind of like Hard Drivin' set in like a toy box world, I guess you could say. This game is at number 1 because back in 2004, a copy was only going to cost you $5. And today, it's only gone up to $24, and while that's not a lot of money, it is 380% increase in value for the number 1 game on the list, Club Drive. And there you have it. The top 25 most valuable Atari Jaguar games. What did you think? Was there anything on the list that surprised you? Was there anything that wasn't on the list that you would have expected to be? I know many of you are going to be wondering why games like Alien vs. Predator weren't on there, but the fact of the matter is that those games are valuable, but they've always been the most valuable games on the system, and despite the fact that they are selling today for $80 to $100, they were also selling for $50 to $60 back in the day, so their percentage change wasn't high enough for them to make it onto the list. Either way, I'd love to know what you think. If you have any thoughts about the games for the Atari Jaguar or this list in particular and how it compares to what you might think it should be, please leave those in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and have a discussion about one of my favorite systems. And while you're down there leaving comments, you might as well smash that subscribe button and, while you're there, press the like button like you've got a 9-button keypad. Like I said, this is my hobby, but those likes and subscribes go a long way towards helping the channel, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks once again for stopping by my channel and checking out this video on the Atari Jaguar. It's one of my favorite systems, and I was happy to get a chance to talk about these games and share it to you in 4K with a immaculate aspect ratio. We'll be back next time with another system that, like the Atari Jaguar, was an attempt to compete with the 32-bit systems that were coming out in the mid-90s, and that is going to be the Sega 32X. So, make sure you're subscribed so you'll be notified when that video comes out, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, this is Technohead, signing off.
We have guidance internal. 10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running, commit. Liftoff. We are for 11:22 a.m. Stop standing by. Keep Conrad reports to your program.